about what ERSA should be doing in the devolved commissioning space. Those of you that will have seen the ERSA manifesto, and I hope that's all of you, but perhaps we'll drop it in the chat during the meeting. We at ERSA we recognise the fact that devolved commissioning is here. It's been here for some time. People like myself who've worked in the sector for a couple of decades at least, are aware that we've had the rich tapestries before where we've had national and devolved funds of money. But I feel like we're in a new landscape at the moment and we need to learn from the devolved experience so far. And as ERSA, with our members, we're trying to kind of build an evidence base for what's worked well with devolved commissioning, whilst we continue to make the case for national provisions. So this event is the first in a series that we're going to run as online events, but we may also run something in person. We had great ideas for that, but as with many things in the next few weeks, I think yesterday's general election announcement sort of puts things on hold, may change the emphasis on some other things. But I think that one of the things we're trying to do is learn from recent experience, think about what works well, think about how things sit together. And I think this afternoon we've got a really good combination of speakers from the West London Alliance, from Shore Trust and from South Yorkshire Combined Authority. So I will stop talking because I think we've now got everybody on the call, and hand over to our first speaker. So we're going to take 3 speakers. We're going to do a Q&A. We've already had some questions that we prompted people to send in advance that I will ask at the end to stimulate that discussion. But can I hand over to you, David, and please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name's David Lillicrap. I work at I'm, for want of a better description, Lead Commissioner of Employment Services across West London. That's not my job title, but that'll do in terms of what you need to know. We've been, as you're probably aware, West London was one of 5 areas that had devolved work and health programme which has been running since 2018. Previously, we'd also been invited by Cabinet Office to run a trailblazer on running IPS in IAPT services. So we've got quite a long track record of this. Under Work and Health Programme, there was a requirement to commission from the market, and I appreciate that there's more freedom being given under universal support, but I'd like really to focus on what is essential to get right, regardless of how you decide to implement your universal support services. I'm sure Richard will back me up on this later when I say that certainly since the pandemic, West London Alliance has been one of the most successful contract package areas nationally. This is something that you will all become aware of, is that universal support, as with Work and Health Programme, is going to be monitored by ONS, and all the data pertaining to your performance will be available presumably via Stat Explore. So when I say that we're the best, that you can go out and check that for yourself on Stat Explore. We're not, can't wing it in terms of your performance in this area. More recently, we've also been one of the pilot areas for IPS in primary care. This is more anecdotal, but again, I'm sure Richard will say we again are very good to excellent in terms of our performance on IPS in primary care. So as I say, in terms of lessons, so what we think, and this is also observationally from other parts of the country that have done well, these lessons, and they're applicable whether you decide to go down a commissioned route or whether you decide to deliver in-house. The first, well, probably the first three are integration, integration, and integration. We, from day one, had single points of contact in each of the boroughs that we represent, and one of their key targets was to help Shore Trust get in with the people who would provide people to go onto the programme. People who actually volunteer for the work and health programme tend to have much better outcomes than people who've been sort of semi-volunteered by DWP. And actually, as I said, probably more observationally, but the best performing contract packages on work and health programme have had the best integration. There's a strong correlation with that. Now, what we have learnt from IPS in primary care is, and previous work, we've been working with our local NHS for many, many years. It's a difficult beast to deal with. And do not underestimate the amount of effort you need to put into getting integration with the NHS. It is critical for the nature of what DWP is expecting from universal support. GP networks and IAPTs are going to be absolutely critical to the success of universal support. And then there's finally a couple, maybe more opinion. Fidelity is crucial. You can't be, an expression I heard, IPS-ish. You've got to go, you really do have to, you can't be, there will be areas where fidelity is impossible to achieve, but that's largely because it's been developed for secondary mental health care settings, and some of the dimensions of fidelity just simply don't exist in primary care. But you have to push to get as close to fidelity as possible. And finally, this is an observation that I don't know how many of you around the table come from regen teams within local authorities, but the services as over the last few years have moved very much more to feeling like a parasocial services offering. And so there's a very strong case to make very good friends with your DASs and get them to bring their team into the delivery of IPS in primary care. Elizabeth seems to have disappeared from my screen. So I'll hand you back to Elizabeth, or shall I hand you straight on to Tina?
Can I ask a question just before we
Yes.
move on, David? Tell us the difference that was made by something like work and health programme being commissioned in this way compared to the other contract package areas that were commissioned by the DWP centrally.
The local authorities understand their area better, and also they have the contacts. I would hazard that there aren't very many people in DWP who know the names of the DASs. They may not even know what DAS stands for within the contract areas that they manage. They certainly don't know such nuance as the fact that in West London, and this will be in common with many metropolitan areas, we have the largest Gurdwara outside of India, and that they serve 10,000 free meals a day to people who potentially would benefit from our employment support. Best will in the world, somebody in DWP maybe sitting in Leeds doesn't know that. And it's that ability to bring the localism and the ability to bring the interaction with the key players is what makes the difference.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Just wanted to ask that now because I felt it was the perfect opportunity because we have other questions later. So thank you, David. Can I hand over to Tina Slater from South Yorkshire Combined Authority?
Thanks, Liz. I've got some slides to share on screen. Is that okay?
It is.
Yeah. Bear with me.
Yeah, we can see those.
Brilliant. I'm just trying to put it onto slideshow,
yeah.
but the toolbars clicked on at the top. Oh, no, we're okay now.
Good.
Here we go. So
perfect.
just to provide a little bit of context, I suppose, to South Yorkshire. So South Yorkshire is home to over 1.4 million people, with 2 cities, 2 towns, and an urban-rural geography. And we have a labour market of around 660,000. Through our recently published skills strategy, we're aiming to ensure that residents and businesses in our region have access to the skills and training that they need to be productive and resilient. So our programmes and support link with 3 strategic missions set out within our skills strategy. So 1, moving those furthest from the labour market into work or be more ready for work. 2, raising attainment of core knowledge and skills, and then also increasing the supply of a high-skilled workforce. So in terms of, in relation to, devolved funding that we have in South Yorkshire, we currently only have the 1 funding stream that is in skills that is actually devolved, and this is the Adult Skills Fund, the Adult Education Budget. The rest of our activity is either delegated or grant funded. But to share some of those challenges, successes and lessons learned within this area, a couple of the challenges that we face is around, I suppose, being the role of a commissioner and a convener. So how do we operate in the same space? And also, I think it's fair to say that we're still quite new to Adult Skills Fund, and we've had only 3 years of experience in this space, but we have recently carried out an impact review of AEB and a review of our community learning provision as well. And in terms of the benefits, so we've been able to be more place focused and apply those local flexibilities. So, for example, introducing shorter qualifications to allow learning organisations to develop a programme of combined units and short qualifications to make those programmes more accessible to learners. And I suppose what's important for devolution is that we maintain that sustainability. So we've done that now. So we're at our full allocations for AB. So what we're doing is we're using our data to decide how and what we fund going forward. So for us, like being data led is really key. So we'll be using the next 6 months to go through that, along with some of the hyperlocal data on demographics and LMI that we have, to really understand what we need in our region to meet the objectives set out within our skills strategy and also the plan for good growth. I wanted to touch on as well, into, because this is, I suppose, my area, the employment side of things. We look at what makes successful commissioning for employment support. So we are moving closer to the, I suppose, more devolved employment support provision. So in South Yorkshire, we are a lot closer to the people that we work with through programmes that we currently deliver, such as Working With, which is the National IPS PC programme, Individual Support in Primary Care. But if I'm honest, we know that we can do better. We'll be working with partners, residents and stakeholders to really understand how we can do that better. And I think building on the successes from Working With, we've got good relationships in South Yorkshire with partners. We've created a strong structure for us to build on. We've recently been successful in our region with Workwell. So one of the 15 ICB areas that will act as a pilot area. We've then also got universal support, as everyone knows, coming later this year. So one of the things that we need to look at is actually how we get that commissioning right for us as a region, there's quite a number of opportunities and options available to us. So that's something I suppose that kind of, you know, we're looking at the minute. But just to in terms of lessons learned as well, just to echo what David said around integration, it is absolutely key, and I totally agree. It shouldn't be underestimated. We've put in a lot of kind of blood, sweat, and tears in building relationships up with health partners. It works better in some areas than others, but you have to keep working at it. People move roles, you know, from organisations, offers change, and it's really important that that effort is put in from the beginning in terms of building those relationships up to ensure those services are integrated. One other thing to add into that as well. Within our region, we have local integration boards, which we set up as part of our Working Win service. And we have one of these in each of our 4 local authority areas. And what they do, that goes, they give an opportunity for employment providers and health providers to come together and work through some of the local challenges. So working together and looking at how we can join things up, as opposed to doing great things but in silo. And in terms of the lessons learned from that, when we first did them, you know, in the trial days of Working Win, I think it's fair to say that the terms of reference was quite loose, and actually in some of the areas they kind of lost their way a little bit. So what we've recently done is really defined what the role of the local integration boards are in each area. So actually the local authorities who lead those forums are able to really kind of drive that, and we can start to, you know, measure the impact this year. And yeah, thank you. That is me.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we're coming back with questions, but can we move on to Richard Clifton, please, from Shaw Trust?
Thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks to both of the speakers. It's really quite nice to be alongside 2 organisations that we work closely with and deliver services on behalf of within their areas. I think Shaw Trust, for those that may not be aware of sort of the breadth of work that we do, particularly with local authorities, with local authorities, combined authorities, or groupings of local authorities, it's around 50 different local authority areas that we actually deliver contracted services for. We also deliver quite a broad range from health and wellbeing, employability, skills, but also our children's homes, children's services, fostering services, etc. I think the key learnings for me, and really has been noted by both working with South Yorkshire and with West London, is moving to more of a true partnership approach of the commissioning, and actually sharing both the risk and the reward that actually comes from that, and not having as much of just a transactional contracting relationship. I think that in itself actually ensures that you get a lot more out of the contract from both the provider's point of view, but also the commissioner's side. And overall, the communities that we're both aiming to support win out of that relationship. I can't disagree with the integration point. I think one of the biggest benefits for me from Devolved commissioning is that it allows us to get more access to a broader range of contacts and inroads into local communities, but also for organisations like ourselves who are embedded in those communities already to actually match those up, so both parties actually win from doing that. I think one thing that can be not recognised sometimes by commissioners, particularly when they're new to this area, is that it does take a while to get the commissioning right, and sometimes it's better to take the time and get the commissioned relationship right with the organisation. And taking that more strategic partnership approach for a long-term relationship can absolutely give you dividends long term. I think we've seen it not only from the people that you've heard from already today, but within Somerset, we have now an award-winning relationship for our children's services side, where we have absolutely walked into and built a strategic partnership that shares risk and reward, and also ensures that we reinvest back into the service more successfully. As a charity, it means more to us to actually make sure that we actually get reinvestment back into the communities that we're serving than anything else, and really to release that social value and greater impact on the ground. Good commissioning, good partnerships absolutely leads to that. And if you want to do the difference between central government and local government, I think I would identify that on a devolved level, because the local authorities know their patch and what works, we can quickly get to sensible decisions of how we can get the best out of a contract. I think my final bit is there's an opportunity, I think, with universal support and IPS and work and the other contract funding streams that are coming through, is for actually local authorities to sit back and go, how do I put all this together into a truly joined up package service? And it's something that actually combined authorities, local authorities can do so much better than central government, because you know what will work on a patch. So I would say use universal support as that opportunity if it's the first time you're getting into this to, as Tina was talking about, how do you make sure that fits with your adult education budget? As David would say, how do we get it to integrate with what you might be doing with your more social service funding routes, etc.? How can you build that all together to have the most impact? I think that's the opportunity for me that devolved commissioning absolutely brings. I could go on for ages, Elizabeth, of what I think we should do with devolved, but I'll pass it back to you.
Right, okay, thank you. So we have some questions, and we would also like to invite, I think we've got 80 something people on the call to contribute. I think I would just like to say, from an ERSA point of view, before we start the discussion, that one of the things we're trying to do with this series is get to the point where we've really shared. So it's today we're doing West London and South Yorkshire, but we want to do a series where we look at other, you know, already devolved commissioned experience, so that we can get to a point where we've brought together that joint experience of providers with local commissioners, the things we've learned that work, the things we'd seek to avoid, and perhaps at that point we can actually have a couple of sides A4 fact sheet that we think are like good practice about devolved commissioning from that kind of joint voice that I think this series will give us. So within that context, I'd like to ask about, before the commissions that have happened in West London and South Yorkshire took place, what infrastructure was already in place to commission locally? And did it work well? And what would you do differently next time?
I can go first if
Tina,
you want.
yeah.
However, it will probably be brief because it was pre my time at Simca. So, but just to say that, you know, kind of, we do commission continuously across our portfolio, and we're always learning each time, you know, kind of from that. So I think it's really important that we take those lessons with us kind of from before, which is helping us now in terms of that devolved commissioning, and we're still learning now to take that forward again, you know, kind of bringing, you know, all the teams together, which, you know, kind of, as I suppose, to help with that. But in terms of commissioning, there is a bit of, you know, kind of constraints with our procurement regs as well. So yeah, I'd say that, yeah, it's that continuous learning, I think, for me on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, from our perspective, I think we were first approached by Cabinet Office in 2014, And right from the start, we've been pulling together co-design workshops with representatives from each of our boroughs. And that gave us a head start when we came into work and health programme, because we already had the structure and relationships in place. I think lessons learned, we probably should have pushed harder. I think it's that difficult issue of getting somebody to do something that isn't part of the day job. And so we got a lot more airtime over COVID, and that we had a good crisis in terms of the fact that for the first time ever, directors of Regen and chief execs wanted to speak to us. I don't know whether it would have been possible to manufacture that relationship earlier, but I think the advantage everyone has now is that DWP see your chief execs as being the accountable person in your for universal support, so you can leverage that to get senior level of airtime with this that we really didn't get until the pandemic. Sorry, Elizabeth, there was a second part to the question. That was about the sort of commissioning infrastructure that was in place.
Yeah, it wasn't actually my question. I asked it as if it was, but what would you do differently next time?
Well, as I said, I think with the advantages, say, of universal support, having chief execs on the hook for its delivery, I would really surf that opportunity to get, because if the chief exec tells somebody to do something, there's a far greater chance that they're going to listen than if I come in without that direct line management responsibility and ask them. We've had some excellent borough representatives, and we have had some maybe slightly more pedestrian ones. It's the way of the world. So yeah, we're getting there. We're getting a lot more airtime at chief executive level, and it would have been nice to have it earlier.
Okay, thank you. I'm hoping that others on the call are thinking of questions, but I've got another one that we did a bit of. Henry did some nudging people to give us some questions to start a discussion. And one of the other things that came in was actually looking at the 49 functional economic areas. So there are going to be new geographies that will have responsibility for devolved commissioning with universal support, and no doubt with other things. Although we now are in a crystal ball moment, really, aren't we, with looking at a general election. But what do you think we've touched a little bit on what you've learnt, but the question that was submitted was, what has been learned in your different areas that the new commissioning functional economic areas would benefit from knowing? Are you both able to kind of give us three things?
I'll give you the first one.
Yeah, go on.
If you do go down a commission model, you have to remember that you can only be successful if you're both successful, which may be something that isn't apparent to, say, the more centralized approach. And I think that also, it may be, if you do go down an in-house model, then that may be less relevant, but you need to actually have a more adult conversation with your commissioners, between the commissioner and the provider. So that's one key thing. The second thing is, if you don't already know by their first name the director in your ICB responsible for the fourth goal of the ICB, I suggest you go and try and find out before, well, tomorrow, basically, or today if there's time.
Do you want to just share with the people on the call what the fourth goal is?
Oh, now you're asking. I was going to bring that in. I should have actually just done my research. It is, in essence, it is that to basically use the funding of the NHS to be a more sort of better socially responsible. Give me a second, I'll look it up.
Okay, well, look, I put you on the spot there. Sorry. Shall we
To-
go over to Tina for a minute and then we can pick back up on that?
Yeah, would you mind just repeating the question, please, Liz?
Yeah, it was about there's going to be new commissioners because of the new sort of functional economic areas, the kind of carve up of the geography, which was done for universal support, but is no doubt some kind of sensible geography for the future. So you are two authorities that have had West London Alliance and the Combined Authority have had that experience of commissioning. What would you say to a geography that's never done it before? You know, three tips.
I would in terms of the delivery, do you mean, Liz? In terms of
commissioning?
Commissioning. Yeah. I think one thing is like reaching out to communities and really knowing and understanding them to understand what is the best commissioning model, I think, for your region. I think that is key. Engaging with partners of voluntary community sector as well. I think their voice in this is key, and they offer a lot of excellent guidance and expertise in this space. And I think communication as well with stakeholders at all levels, from kind of boots on the ground, to kind of strategic buy-in. I think that's really kind of critical at all levels. So getting that strategy right is the three for me, I think, Liz.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want my third?
Yeah, go on. Yes, please.
If you've not got I mean, the combined authorities have got something of an advantage in they have a legal standing to work as a partnership. When I say I'm from West London Alliance, I don't actually. The West London Alliance doesn't exist. It is a term that refers to 7 boroughs working together, which I think is more like the slight majority of the country that is not going to be under a formal combined authority legal entity. I would, again, as soon as possible, get in touch with the however many chief executives in your area, and ask them to start appointing representatives to work with whoever has, I don't know whether you've even identified a lead, to work with the lead borough and to start to provide that breaking down of doors locally. There's an opportunity to and I don't think it's premature, even if universal support is delayed by 6 to 9 months. I think that period of conversation and socializing with your colleagues from other boroughs gets you to a point where, when universal support does become a thing, you've already got that infrastructure in place.
Okay, thank you. Have we got anybody on the call who'd like to ask a question, make a related point? The tradition of teams, raise a hand. I think the hand I can see is not showing.
I've got my hands up. I've got my hands up.
Go for it.
It's Caroline. Hi, I'm Caroline Bostock from Palladium. So I've had 2 halves of my career. First half of my career was in local government, economic development, procuring, managing economic development programs, and then the last half I've worked in the kind of provider base for a number of the employability providers. So I guess I've seen both sides of the fence, and I can definitely see like the real strengths of devolution. I guess it's going back to a point that was made earlier about, I think it was David that said that the Working Health Programme, that the West London Alliance Working Health Programme is one of the highest performing programmes of the whole programme. And I definitely think Working Health Programme, I did a lot of work in Greater Manchester in a previous job, I think it was informed quite heavily by things like Working Well, which I think had a really good influence on not just the Devolved Work and Health programme, but also the nationally commissioned Work and Health programme and subsequent DWP programmes. I think the model of delivery has gone definitely in the right direction as a result of that. And I think even the centrally commissioned programmes have become much better at being better integrated within their local areas. I know it's probably not the same everywhere, but that's definitely seems to be kind of my perception of it. Anyway, my question is, has there been any analysis of how well the devolved commission programmes have done versus the centrally commissioned programmes? And is that something that's possible?
It's certainly possible. I take quite a mercenary view. I tend to just look at my own data.
Yeah.
But on Stat Explore, the performance of the work and health program is there that anyone who has a data and analyst working for them can basically go in. It might be a little bit complicated, which is partly why we don't have very large teams in the Devolved Work and Health program because of historical funding issues. But if you can map the geography to the local authorities, you can compare very easily the performance. That won't take into account different demographics and different issues faced in different areas. And I'm not sure DWP have been undertaking evaluations of the work and health program. I'm not certain whether they've been published or indeed are going to be in the near future. So there is the DWP teams have done some very high quality research into the performance, but I don't, as I say, I'm not entirely sure when or whether that's being published.
I think that's a really good question, Caroline. I think that's actually something that ERSA should take away, because I think we need to. I'm not saying ERSA can do it. I'm saying we can keep asking that question, yeah, and get to the bottom of it, because it would be really, really good to know, because it's very easy to be going down the track without. We need to actually have the data. However, I can see the next hand that's raised is Colin Brown from DWP. I don't know whether he's raised his hand to contribute or ask a question, but anyway, over to you, Colin.
And he's now regretting putting his hand up at that time. So
yeah.
If you'd like, Elizabeth, do we want to take away an action? Because I'm not
linked to
WHP, but I know there's plenty of MI. There is evaluation going, but I don't know what the schedule is for publication. With sort of referrals coming to an end in the near future, it probably is imminent. But if you like, we can take an action if you like for that one.
Lovely, thank you.
My question, if I'm allowed, as an evil national commissioner, looking at devolution, I don't know what the direction of travel is. You flagged up about universal support, and your last question that I think you posed yourself was quite close to what I wanted to ask, in that how could a central government department like DWP, for example, replicate the benefits of devolution if continuing to commission at a national level? I think Tina put some sort of good examples forward, and I think Richard as well, that your experience sort of welcome as well as a provider, not just a commissioner. Is there anything that we and others can sort of take away and sort of build into current provision, or anything that we commission nationally in the future?
Shall I come in on that? Colin, so I have the benefit of having worked through the full life cycle of work and health program, and at one point I think there was a view that work and health program would be commissioned by DWP and that the local authorities would have a co-commissioned role in it, which I was actually quite open to. I think some of our politicians saw money and decided they wanted to go after it, but my view was I'd rather not have the accountability for the very large sums of money involved and leave that with DWP. So we did think about this as to and I do think that centrally commissioned work, if it is done on regional contract packages, you need to get closer to the local authorities, because then I think, and I appreciate at the moment outside the combined authorities and the London sub-regions, there's not much for you to hang your hat on unless you go down to sort of the individual top tier local authorities. Yeah, that's where
Okay.
I'd sort of advise. So you can then, there should be no reason why you couldn't generate that same integration as you did, as can be achieved at the local level. It's just we do have less barriers to it, because, but it's, you need to find someone, you know, who can give you the intro, or can own the relationships to the DASs, the CEOs,
Yeah.
the ICB, because you know, a lot of your commissioning will be in areas of the country you're not familiar with. I mean, we had some very bad examples of this during the again during the pandemic. The NHS were trying to put together vaccination clinics. Because we did actually find them most of their staff, but that's a separate matter. But what they sourced inappropriate location. Again, I think based out of, is it Roundhay in Leeds, they sourced what looked on paper to be very good sites, but with local knowledge we could tell them that actually there was only one bus and you had to change, there's only one bus to this site. There was no parking, it's not accessible by any other public transport other than a bus that runs twice an hour. Other than that, great site, great, you know, fitted all the criteria for disability access and size, but we took one look at it and said, well, that ain't gonna work. And what was slightly sad was that we were already on the inside and they weren't turning to us and saying, can you help us identify some locations that might be good? So
yeah, okay.
we are all on the same side.
Yeah. I'll just throw something in before I can see that that Phil Dyke's got his hand raised, and we'll come to you in a minute. I've heard it said, and I do agree to an extent, that even on national provisions, we've got those contract package areas, we've got prime organisations that bid for them, and part of that bidding process is that they have to demonstrate their local knowledge to that CPA and build strategic partnerships and supply chains. So national provisions aren't all the same, are they? They're done within a sort of a structure and a framework. And
Yeah.
I think there's, you know, we've got to recognise that in a way, that and I just wanted to kind of prompt the discussion really a little bit with that, because it's not purely national of, you know, on the whole, is it? You know, whether it's Restart Working Health, whatever.
Can I just add, Elizabeth? I think,
yeah,
from so coming back to your point, Colin, I think taking a little bit broader of what I would say from a provider point of view, I've learned from the best bits of commissioning, actually taking both national and sort of regional and local authority commissioning. I think some of the best things we've had is where contracting and commissioning is done in such a way that it's not back to the commissioning into a corner. So we don't end up in a situation where you lock yourself into a single way of delivering it for the next 7-10 years, that you actually have built into it really good annual reviews that allow you to actually make changes. That's not to say you change the whole principle of delivery or the outcomes you want, but you do actually allow changes and true learning over a period of a contract, so you continue to improve it. I think it's really important to build that in at the very start, so you build it into the commission process and the contracting, so it allows the contract to grow and develop over time. So I think for me, that's really important. I think if you want to engage with local organisations and smaller organisations and charities and wider breadth, quite often local authorities are better engaged in those because they don't pass down as much risk. And I think national government is very good at having although they'll say they don't give me unlimited liabilities in contracts, I do end up with some hidden unlimited liabilities within contracts and risks at a level that actually rule others out. I think sometimes local authorities are a lot better at negotiating that. Not all, and I still have discussions with local authorities about it as well. But we do get to a point that it is shared risk between the commissioner and the provider. And I think they're key bits from a commissioning point of view that I think we have to be really mindful of. So we make sure that we have, as David said, as Tina said, real understanding of the local area, but also do it in a way that you can continue to learn. Because also local areas and need develop over time, and you need to be able to respond to it.
Okay, great, thank you. So, Philip Dark, shall we go over to you?
Hello, very quick one, a couple of quick ones. So firstly, absolutely agree with everything Richard just said in particular. And certainly if you're looking at what Colin was saying, if you're looking at a national basis and trying to kind of get some of the benefits of devolution, retaining flexibility in that is critical, which is really hard because normally they want you to pitch a model that is then locked in for as long as you're bidding. Kind of, if you want to really integrate locally and get the benefits of local integration, you have to allow some flex. The other thing was just sort of a general point about work and health program data. There's a massive health warning on that data because it was a price competitive competition. So not every one of those contracts has the same price. In fact, every one of those contracts probably has a different price. So if you're looking at relative performance, only DWP has the full insight of actually the relative effectiveness of each of those programs within that context. So you do sort of need to take that slight health warning on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I can see many very knowledgeable colleagues on this call, so I'm looking for others to raise their hands and contribute. I do have, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just to add into that flexibility, I think one thing to mention in that flexibility is the people that are accessing the programme, their voice in this as well. So like some of our programmes, whether it be IPSPC or some of the others, we make sure that we've got those peer support groups, they're feeding back to us all the time so that we can develop that programme and evolve it. So yeah, just to kind of add that bit into that, if that's okay. Yeah,
that's brilliant. We have another question that that somebody sent in earlier. Was about what are the pros and cons of like local authorities as commissioners and also deliverers of service? How do you get that balance right between in-house delivery and commissioning from local or regional organisations to deliver?
I think that one is quite difficult, and I don't think I've got an answer for that, but I think what is important is that, like for us, we work closely with our local authority partners that do have provision in-house, and our providers, and we kind of go on that journey together and to make sure that we've got that right provision in place, and again it's commissioned in the right way.
Okay, so about getting the right provision regardless of in-house or
yeah,
yeah,
it is a difficult one though, and it is, and it is, yeah, I know it. I think there'll be some challenges as well over the coming months.
Yeah, indeed. When I saw it, I thought, at what point do I ask that question? And then I thought I'll ask it now. Anyway, any more hands for contributions, questions? I think whilst we're waiting for that, one of the other things I'd like to say is that, you know, this is part of a series, and this is about experience today, and that I know there's other people on this call with experience. So what the team at ERSA would like is other people to actually say, I'm from a combined authority, I'd like to share my experience, or I've been working on a devolved commission and I'd like to share that experience, and actually just keep building this. So if don't be shy of offering to do what Tina, David and Richard have done this afternoon. Okay, right, Michael, I can see, is it, oh, Michelle, I need my glasses on. Michelle, apologies.
Sorry, hi, yeah, I'm Michelle Davis, work for Shropshire Council, but for Enable. So I guess we're in that unique position in Shropshire that Enable are Shropshire Council supported employment service, but majority of our funding is actually external. So we deliver, you know, under Serco and Shore Trust and many other. But more recently, we have been commissioned, obviously through the UK SPF funding by our own local authority. So, you know, I'm sure it's experienced. I'm the deputy manager for Enable. Some of you probably know Roshni, who's the more experienced manager. She's on holiday this week, but I'm sure she'd be happy to talk about that. But you know, we've had a positive. If anything, we've probably had a really positive experience. But our local authority is so nervous about the fact that we belong to the local authority, but we exist, I suppose, in isolation as a supported employment provider, that we probably have to jump through extra hoops than perhaps some of our peers from partner organisations bidding for the UPSPF funding. And also the short-term nature of the funding is obviously a real challenge, particularly with the UKSPF. We also deliver IPS on behalf of our ICB in Shropshire and Telford and Herefordshire now as well. So we have got some experience of both doing, you know, external provision and that internal provision through the Devolved funding.
Okay. Well, I've made a note of this. It might be a really good one for a future session. So
yeah, no problem. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Michelle. Anybody else? Giving it a minute. Richard, you were in part the brains behind the first of these sessions. Is there anything that you'd like to say to conclude this one?
No, I think it is. I was keen to do it because I was keen for people to have an opportunity to share experiences, particularly with more local authorities being given the opportunity to actually commission at the local level with universal support coming up. I appreciate we might have a little bit of a pause on that on the basis of an announcement yesterday, but I still think it's really important that we're going to have different approaches across the country. And I think from a provider perspective, I think it needs to be recognised by all commissioners that also can make it difficult for us, because it does mean that we're being asked to do theoretically the same delivery in different areas of the country under different contractual arrangements, commissioning behaviours, etc., which actually adds our internal costs. Because if I work, and I do already deliver, and if I take IPS and PC as an example, we deliver 4 of those around the country at the moment. You all want something slightly different as far as your MI feedback. You all set slightly different KPIs. So I think if we could get to a stage where you can share more, and you all get on a similar page, it'll just mean we reduce the cost of delivery. Because if we reduce our management costs, we don't pass it into the contracts, but more money goes to the front line. And I think that's my only fear with devolution, is that we could end up using too much on management and not getting as much to the front line. So I think that's just something I would like to sort of be conscious of. And I think from a sort of yeah, let's have some lessons learned. It's really good that Tina and David have had the experience and actually putting themselves out there today. I think it is really useful for those that may not have commissioned this type of scale of employment service related contracts. Talk to you guys, and I'm going to sort of suggest that it's not just in these calls that you pick up the phone and talk to each other, because you might as well learn from their mistakes that they've made, and you don't make the same ones, even if you don't want to ask the question publicly. I think it's really important that actually it just helps us all to make sure that the service we all want to see delivered at a local level get delivered in the best way they possibly can.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you, Richard. So I think it now falls to me. We're at the hour. Thank Tina and David for going first with this. Thanks to Richard, who's the ERSA board member, who suggested this as a series to the team. We're going to do it. If you're happy to speak, happy to contribute, please drop us an email. It doesn't matter which email address it comes into. It can be to me or to Henry or to policy at ERSA or events at ERSA, and we'll pick it up. I think we might just pause for a couple of weeks to see what direction we're going in, but at the end of the day, devolution's here. Devolution's already happened. Whatever government we get next, there will be, you know, devolved contracts, and we don't want to lose any of the kind of experience today or lose any of the sort of momentum that I think has already been created in the recent months. So I'm not saying we're going away till the end of the summer. I think we just need to kind of prioritise a few different things in the next few weeks. So if you haven't seen the ERSA manifesto, it's on the website. I'm hoping Henry might drop it in the chat. Try and make good use of that in the next 6 weeks. We're doing lots of things now around how we engage with candidates and make the case for employment support. And we need your help doing that. We're just, you know, the voice, the collective voice through the membership organisation. So thanks, everybody. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.